Use the Force, Luke.
Live long and prosper.
I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
Lilu Dallas Multipass.
Shut up and take my money.
By Grabthar's hammer, what a saving.
One does not simply walk into Mordor.
X never, ever marks the spot.
Winter is coming.
You're a wizard, Harry.
Stay a while and listen.
Hey ho, Kermit the Frog here.
Bow ties are cool.
So say we all.
This is a Play on Nerds.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 52 of A Play on Nerds. We're so glad to be back from our long winter break. I am Jarman.
I'm Steve, and it was such a nice break, but we're so happy to be back with all of you.
Absolutely. I feel like it's been way too long since we've been recording. But we had a long break for the holidays and for New Year's, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah.
Yeah, Kwanzaa, Christmaka.
The winter solstice, Boxing Day.
The Druid Festival of the Aligning Moons. I don't know. just throwing shit out there now. So we did all that.
What did you do for New Year's and everything? So I think we talked a little bit about Christmas before.
For New Year's, I didn't do anything. Ann and I just stayed in. We were so tired. We had a flight back from Pittsburgh on the 31st that got us home at about 2 p.m. And at that point, we were just so wiped from traveling.
Oh, yeah, I'd imagine.
So we watched a couple movies that we got for the holiday and ate some popcorn and just sort of slummed out. It was great.
Slummed out.
But then for the holiday, we were with Aaron's family up in Concord, California. And then on the 26th, we flew out to Pittsburgh, spent a few days out there with my family, got to see Christian and Sarah and the baby, who is adorable.
Your little nephew or niece? What was it? Niece, that's what it was.
Little Luciana is her actual name.
Oh, that's pretty.
Lucia. Little Lucia. I call her little Lulu. She's just so adorable. I'm never going to call her that. I'm going to call her Lucy or Lulu. It's just going to happen. I'm her uncle. I can do what I want.
That's true.
And it was just a lot of fun to see the whole family. And it was a really good holiday. How about you? What did you do?
Well, I went to Miami where my aunt lives. She has a large house there in Coral Gables. So the whole family meets up there for a late Christmas. And then for New Year's, I went to a Harry Potter themed New Year's party, which was a lot of fun.
Ooh, does sound fun.
I just wore my house colors, which was Ravenclaw, but otherwise I didn't really have a Harry Potter outfit per se. But it was fun. Good times for all. And
good.
Yeah, now we're just back in the swing of things, I hope.
And I want to play not even really a game, but so what'd you get for Christmas?
That's a game.
Yeah, it's kind of a game. It's sort of.
Oh, well, I'm trying to remember what I got. You tell me what you got.
I got so much shit. I don't even know how.
Really?
I mean, like a friggin' bandit this year. Holy crap. I haven't done this well since I was 8.
Jeez.
So every year my parents bug the hell out of Anna and I for a list from me. And I always send it so late. This year I got it done like a month ago. Found all this shit on Etsy that I wanted, and mostly, I won't lie, internet, Muppet collectibles. That's
fantastic.
That's what it was. So I chose a bunch because a lot of them were like one item only. So I figured some of them would be sold by the time they look for Christmas stuff. So they'll still have a few options. So I sent them like 9 or 10, and a list of 9 or 10 things. And they just got all of them.
Oh, geez.
So I got a vintage Miss Piggy alarm clock. I got some classic 1970s Pez dispenser Muppets, and I got me some art starring Sir Didymus from Labyrinth. We got an Ernie cookie jar. I got a copy of a classic kids book I used to love when I was a kid. No One Knows Where Gobo Goes. I got 2 vintage, one of them in such sweet condition, vintage lunchboxes. One's kind of banged up, but it's Pigs in Space. The other one is in perfect condition, and it's Muppet Babies.
That's right, people. We are almost 30 years old.
Damn right. This is where you start getting this shit. These are the good times, people.
You can finally afford to get the things you want to get when you're a kid.
I didn't even buy this stuff.
Yeah.
And then we, on a more serious note, we got a set of ceramic knives.
Nice.
We got a really good chocolate bar. It was a good Christmas. We got 2 movies. We got Mad Max, Fury Road, and Jurassic World on Blu-ray.
Very cool. That's great.
I don't know what happened this year. Like last year, I remember getting 4 gifts and being like, well, next year I'll have to ask for things. I guess it happened.
Well, you also went to visit like everyone's family, didn't you? Get to see everybody?
Yeah, that's true. We did.
There you go. I'm remembering more of what I got now. I got a
tell me.
gift card to get one of those glasses from Warby Parker. I love that site, Warby Parker.
Ooh,
you can get
yeah,
glasses
it's very
there.
nice.
So I'm getting those soon. And my mom got me Mace because I do Uber driving now, where I drive strangers around in my car for money.
Yeah.
So she got me Mace to have in the car. Isn't that great? I had adorable matching bowls or ceramic nice bowls from my cousin got them for me of C3PO and R2D2 for the
Very
office.
nice.
Put candy
Excellent.
in them. And then my sister also got me the an encyclopedia to all the characters in Doctor Who, which is kind of neat.
Wow, cool.
Yeah, fun stuff. Some utilitarian stuff too.
Are you sure you didn't get anything else?
I got a gift card to Dunkin' Donuts.
So really, no one sent you anything?
Wait, Peter got me something. Oh, he got me a nice silver Star Trek tie clip, which is nice.
So no co-host of yours got you anything?
No, you didn't get me anything.
Sent it to you.
Nope.
Well, shit.
That was long ago, I forgot.
I'm sorry it got stolen. My apologies.
Yes, co-host Steven got me, he sent me a package of blueprints to the original Enterprise, and it's actually it's like a huge like envelope full of all these blueprints from the Enterprise made back in like the early 70s. And actually the edition that you got me, I searched and it's not really available anywhere. So I'm going to take care of that thing because eventually it could be worth something.
We didn't open it because we didn't want to touch it, but we couldn't find the date anywhere on it. So we had no way to date it.
I found the edition number, and that's like that told me the year, and that edition is nowhere to be found on the internet. So you got it where?
It's called, what is it? Time Tunnel Toys.
Oh, okay.
Right. Yeah. Time Tunnel Toys in San Jose, California. They had two more.
You got in a real place.
Yeah. But we did not quite as old.
Yeah, it's probably a different model or something, or different edition.
Yeah.
So it's a very cool gift. Thank you, Steve.
Good. When we saw it how long ago? 2 months ago? We saw it 3 months ago. And Anna went, we can't not get this. And I said, you're absolutely right, sweetie.
I appreciate it.
So we got it. And it was, oh man, we were so excited to send it to you.
I have to mention that Patrick, our video game correspondent and Twitch editor, he did get me a gift as well, but I can't talk about it on air. For reasons.
Why can't you talk about it on air?
We'll talk about it later.
All right, we'll talk about it off air. Cool. Yeah, so it was a good Christmas.
Very cool.
Oh, one thing I did that was absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
So in Pittsburgh, we go to this place that was just a movie theater last time I was there, but now has this multi-purpose facility thing. And inside of it is a trampoline park that allows adults in.
It sounds incredibly dangerous.
So Anna and I both signed a huge waiver and then paid $8 for an hour to go and bounce on these huge trampolines along with like 200 children.
Did you hurt anyone?
No. But man, my feet hurt, my legs hurt.
Oh,
Trampolining is hard. But my favorite part of the whole thing is on one like half of the trampoline thing, in this room with this netting on one side, they put kids in it, let them play dodgeball with each other. It was like watching elementary school all over. This huge kids just beating children.
It's very dangerous activities put together in one place.
It was all so good.
Oh God.
The trampoline park. Can't recommend it enough.
Interesting, for sure.
Yeah, it was a lot. It's something that took me back to my childhood.
Yeah.
I'm old enough to say that now. So nerd news, huh?
Yeah.
It's time for Nerdy News.
I saw some very interesting nerdy news here today out of Nerdist, surprisingly. But they're reporting from NASA has announced that they're opening the Planetary Defense Coordination Office, the PDCO, which is going to basically be our protection agency against foreign objects coming from outer space, like meteors, comets,
aliens. Yeah, go on.
Well, anything being propelled at us, being thrown at the planet, basically, because of things that happened, like in, I think it's called Chelyabinsk, Russia, which is the last time we saw that big explosion of thing over Russia. It was like a meteorite piece that kind of exploded over that part of Russia, and thousands of people were injured. It was on a bunch of dash cam videos and stuff. It was crazy looking. That was like maybe 1 or 2 years ago. But So then they're also heading the research of finding ways to deflect these objects coming in. One of the ways they're going to test the next couple of years actually is using one of our crafts in space to use its small gravitational pull to kind of drive in front of an asteroid or something to try to see if that will deflect it a little bit. So if we actually do have one that is going right for us, we have a way of deflecting it in the future. So I didn't know we didn't have something like this already. So I'm glad we have something trying to protect us now.
At least we have a plan. Mind you, when you're saying that to me, I'm like, that sounds stupid. But at least we got something, right?
We're working on it at least. So we might not die in the future.
So normally for my news story, I come up with a clever name. But this week, the name of the article was too good for me to change it.
Okay.
Are you ready for this?
So ready.
Sexual rebellion and murder among the bees.
Do you just have like an entomological website you go to for all your bug stuff?
No, it's all Reddit. So scientists have reported that bumblebees, specifically bumblebees, there's a couple different types of bees, bumblebees specifically, hives typically don't get that big. The typical hive only hits 150 workers. And they don't last that long. Between 9 years and a month is typical cycle before a new queen is spawned and flies off. But apparently at like 9 months or a year, something in the wax changes and makes the female worker bees just go fucking insane. And they start competing sexually against the queen for male attention. And they end up killing the queen and sabotaging eggs. And the entire colony basically massacres itself and then implodes.
Oh God.
And they figured out that it's the wax because they took wax from an old hive and introduced it to these brand new bees, fresh new hive bees, and they went friggin' nuts immediately and just killed each other.
Wow. It's like mad cow disease for bees.
Yeah, it's just insane. So it's something in the wax that's making bees just commit mass genocide against each other. But yeah, one more time. Sexual rebellion and murder among the bees.
It sounds like a bee movie, horror movie.
I know, right?
So we had a big interview with a friend of yours named Dan Armerding. Am I saying that right?
Armerding.
Armerding. Okay. Mm-hmm. Interesting last name. And so what is he going to be talking about?
Today, Dan is going to be joining us to talk about beer. And I will tell you, folks, you are in for a treat because he talks about beer, science, everything.
He has nuts. Nerd passion for beer.
Please
for sure.
Listen. It's totally worth it if you're into beer.
We learned so much, and I'm sure you will as well.
Yep.
So here it is, our interview with Dan
Armerding.
Let's have a party and drink up a lot of beer. Let's have a party and drink up a lot of beer. Yes, wine is fine, but give me lots of beer. I'm gonna drink some beer and shed some tears.
All right, listeners, ladies and gentlemen, we bring to you a very special guest this week, an old friend of mine from my days in Seattle, Dan Armerding.
Hey, everybody.
And today, Dan is going to be teaching us all about and telling us all about beer. One of the best inventions in history.
Beer. One of the oldest inventions.
One of the oldest inventions in history. And we're going to learn all about it from Dan. And now, Dan, I just want you to take a moment to explain to our listeners why we should be listening to you.
Why? I don't know. I can tell
that you're not just some homeless person we picked up.
I can tell you what I do for my job, but I don't know if that means you should listen to me.
Okay, good.
So I am the tasting room manager at Two Beers Brewing Company and Seattle Cider Company, and you guessed it, Seattle. I've been in the craft brewing industry for the last 6 years. I've been a part of the same brewing company, Two Beers, since its inception. Joel Vandenbrink, the founder, and I used to paint houses together. And when we finished up painting houses, he was going to become a pastor and then decided that creating a space for people to have honest conversation was more appropriately done at a bar than at a church. So,
amen.
Right?
Plus, he was drunk all the time. So that's really bad.
Yeah,
for
that sacramental wine just
there are
wasn't
a lot
quite
of drunk
cutting it.
Irish priests. Let's leave it at that.
That's true.
He's Dutch. So.
Oh, good.
With a name like Vandenbrink, you couldn't guess that. No, but yeah, that's okay. I'm not fully. I'm studying to become Cicerone certified currently, but haven't passed any of that test. But I have been a part of literally every part of the beer making process, other than actually malting. I've done hop harvesting, I've done brewing, I've done cellar work, deliveries, sales, retail. That's pretty much been my life for the last more than half a decade.
All right, people. So we found a guy.
A guy.
And apparently we have a long way to go because I don't know what half the terms you mentioned mean.
Yeah, right.
So he'll have a lot of explaining to do.
I understood retail and beer
and sales.
I knew that sales. I knew sales.
Yeah, did that. Sales sucks. It sucks having to walk into a business that has everything they need and say, "Here, I know you have everything you need, but I made this thing, and I know it is not perfect, but you should buy it." That's my sales pitch. I'm not very good.
Good.
So what do you say you do for them now?
So I am the tasting room manager. That's sales on the easy end. That's when someone comes in and already knows that they want to drink your product. So you just have to guide them to the right one. I am sometimes behind the bar bartending, but mostly I am coordinating events that come through, making sure we don't run out of toilet paper, ensuring that we get proper stock from the brewery and the cider company, managing our point of sale system and inventory, purchasing retail items like hoodies and t-shirts, growlers, glassware, and actually doing the design for a good portion of that as well.
Very cool. So a lot of hats at one time.
Yes.
Yeah. And when that arises from being a part of a small company. It has the brewery. When I jumped on board, there was 4 people in the company. And then pretty much up until the beginning of 2014, it was about to 8. Between 2014 and 2016, we're now between the two companies, we're up to about 26 people.
Wow.
Nice.
So it is really, really exciting. And it's, I was telling Steve, with cider is relatively new. The beer community has been out and about. The craft beer industry is really robust and nationwide is having really, really great reception, but cider just doesn't really have a market right now. And
I love cider.
It's been really, really cool because that's largely the response we've been getting. But I was telling Steve, we were the first, Seattle Cider Company was the first hard cider company in the city of Seattle since Prohibition. There are 300 breweries in Seattle or in Washington State, and there's like right now there's 30 cider companies. But when we jumped on board, that was like 13.
That's weird because like my whole gaming group, I meet up weekly to play Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
And I drink beer, but they all drink cider. That's all they drink.
Yeah.
So it's definitely going to be more and more popular.
Yeah, it's great.
It's what the elves would drink.
There you go. I guess I'm a dwarf then. I'm
Right. Having a stein of ale. No,
right.
it's cider's great because it's a great sort of in-between point for the wine drinking crowd and the beer drinking crowd. It's a carbonated beverage that's served on draft, so it's like beer in that way, but it is fermented fruit. The whole production process is very, very close to wine. It's actually federally legally considered wine. It's regulated that way. The brewery and the cider, you have to have 2 different addresses, 2 different manufacturing spaces because you can't make beer and wine in the same place.
Okay.
Yeah, because reasons.
Because science and stuff,
Yeah, right.
So back in the day, like I first started ever drinking with Steven. We both started around the same time.
That's right.
There really wasn't much in the way of cider. There was Zima and things like that. I guess they're like wine coolers.
Our first drinks that we had were a Mike's Hard Lemonade.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
Smirnoff Ice. I think raspberry or maybe apple.
Yep.
And those are considered malt liquor, right?
Yeah, totally. Those are malt liquor. Those are you use grain sugar to get your alcohol. You convert grain sugar over into alcohol.
So it's basically made from sugar, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. That's why they smell like nail polish remover. You get there's a type of alcohol called fusel alcohol. that smells like nail polish remover, and it's largely responsible for giving you really gnarly hangovers. Well, I mean, any alcohol in enough quantity will hurt, but fusel alcohols will really run you through the ringer.
The more sugary, the worse it is.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Sugar's also not super great for you in that quantity.
That'll kill you.
But that's been one of the challenges for the cider company that we've been overcoming, is that largely the association is with like super, super sugary malt liquors. And it is like a lot of our stuff, our dry cider that we make has 0 residual sugar in it. It's bone dry. And most of our sugars have about 1/3 to 1/4 as much as most of the other ciders like Angry Orchard or Strongbow or Woodchuck on the market. There's not a lot of sugar in them. So it really is pretty dry. Like, it's not a super sweet beverage. To sort of connect the two company, that was largely informed by a beer drinking palate. I mean, the 4 main ingredients in beer, it's water and then malt, which is grain that's been hydrated to the point where it starts to grow, and then you dry it out. And then hops, which are a soft little pine cone looking flour, and then yeast. And hops are responsible for the bitterness in the beer. And so most beer drinkers' palates, especially now with the popularity of like IPAs, they're biased toward a slightly more acidic, slightly more bitter beverage. And so being able to...
I hate that shit.
Oh, yeah? I love it. IPAs are my favorite.
Why do I want to? It's so bitter. Like, when do you ever say that at any other point in your life? You're like, I love it. It's so bitter. That's
it's like coffee. It really is one of those things where you have to have, or like spicy food. Like, the more of it that you consume, it literally is the threshold that your body can accept or can sort of deal with grows. And so when you first try like an India Pale Ale, it's going to blow your fucking tongue off. Like, it really is bitter. But the fun thing about beers like that is it's not, because taste is comprised not just of, flavor is comprised not just of taste. There are 5 tastes. There's sweet, sour, bitter, salty, and then umami, savor. And then everything else that you experience as part of quote unquote flavor is aroma. And so with IPAs, they have these really, really expansive aromas. And yeah, you have aggressive bitterness on the palate, but if you focus on what's going through your olfactory process, if you focus on the nose, it becomes really exciting. It's like, oh my gosh, because a lot of people like bitter things. You like coffee, you like grapefruit juice, you like stuff that has high acidity to it. And so if you can find familiar flavors in beer like that, of like, oh my God, this beer tastes like a shot of espresso, or this beer tastes like I'm biting into a tangerine, then it becomes familiar. Then it becomes accessible to you. And it's not just like, oh my God, this is bitter. It becomes a full experience rather than just like one set of taste buds getting hammered.
You're like a frame of reference for what it kind of tastes like, and then your brain can kind of accept it.
Totally. Well, aroma, smell, your olfactory sense is the number one sense associated with memory. And so when you smell tangerine, or you smell grapefruit, or you smell lilac, you can awaken a lot of really pleasant memories associated with those flavors. So you start getting like little dopamine squirts of like happy memories just based on what you're smelling out of your glass. That's why, like, when you'll see, you know, the sort of quintessential or the stereotypical beer nerd, like, will go down and smell, you know, swirl and smell, and then they'll just go, oh my God. Like, it really is like sort of calling up a bunch of pleasurable experiences.
Nah, I just think a real stinky beer.
It's delicious. I love IPAs.
Yeah. Stinky beer is like, if you've ever had a Heineken before, it tastes like pine and skunk. That's because it's been exposed to too much light. Ultraviolet light will break down those hydrocarbons, those things that make the beer smell good, and into their most basic building blocks, which smell like rotting vegetable matter. Like, it smells like skunk.
So here's a random question.
Yeah, what's up?
The process alone to make a beer is so complicated.
Yeah.
But yet it's been around since like the beginning of time. Like,
Totally.
they drank it instead of water because like the water in the Nile was too dirty to drink. So they drank beer and wine instead. How the hell did they come up with this?
So beer has been around a long time. It was twofold. One, it was potable water. It was potable liquid. It was liquid that you could drink because there was alcohol in it and it didn't kill you.
Exactly.
And 2, it was a vehicle for moving nutrition without it going bad because there was alcohol in it and it kept it safe from spoilage. It kept beer from going stale or bread from going stale. So the beer, like you go back to the earliest written document. This is sort of a little fun factoid. The earliest written document that we have is a hymn to Ninkasi, which is the Babylonian goddess of beer. And it's a hymn that has the ingredients. It sort of spells out the process of making beer. And you know, there are hieroglyphics that talk about the Egyptians brewing beer, et cetera, et cetera. All of that, the beer that they drank, it was pretty high in alcohol. It was about 8-9%.
Okay.
But it was also closer to like oatmeal. It was like alcoholic porridge. It was super high in protein. It was really, really high in carbs. And it was a way that you could get, it was like a power bar. It was a way that you could get a ton of nutrition really quickly, like while you were working, and feel good about your workday. It was sort of the quintessential, you know, you see construction guys cracking beers on their lunch break. Like that's it. That's what it was. Now, since beer has been around for a very, very long time, we've finally figured out what's happening. We finally figured out that, there's yeast in the air, and that's causing the grain sugars to ferment and create alcohol. And that alcohol is providing stability. What can we do to more efficiently convert all of the sugars out of the grain so that we can all the starches in the grain into sugar so that we can turn it into alcohol. It's just been a refining process. And if you guys want, I'm really happy to just sort of go super nerdy and go through the whole chemical process of what actually happens in the beer making process.
If you can explain to us like we're idiots, because we are.
Yeah,
totally.
That's pretty much our request at any time.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like I said, the 4 ingredients of beer are water, malt, hops, and yeast. And it all comes down to like every alcoholic beverage that you drink. Think of an old fashioned. You want to get 4 components out of it. You want to get booze, which in your old fashioned.
I do like that. Go on.
Yeah, that's yes. You need to have a bittering agent because alcohol is naturally pretty sweet. Ethanol tastes sweet to the palate, so you have to have something to balance that out. So that's where the hops come in. And then you want to have a little bit of sweetness too, so that you can temper. If you want to scale up your bitterness beyond what the alcohol is doing, you want to have a bittering agent so that you can scale up both of those together. So you get more sugar out of your grain, particularly out of grains that have not just been malted, but have been roasted to the point where you caramelize some of the sugars and they become unfermentable. And then you need an aromatic character to it. Like I mentioned, the old fashioned, you know, you have your booze, your sugar, your bitters, and your lemon. Those are the 4 components. You get your aroma out of your lemon, you get your bitterness out of your bitters, you get sweetness out of your sugar, and then you get your booze from your booze.
Oh, that's why old fashioned's so good. Okay.
Yeah, right? And that's why it's an old fashioned cocktail. It's sort of the bare bones of what an alcoholic drink should be. That's my opinion. Whatever.
All right. You fancy bastard.
I know, right? So with beer, you pretty much start with malt, and we use barley. Primarily barley gets used. You can use any cereal grain. So you can use oatmeal, you can use wheat, you can use rye. But barley is really great because it has what's called a pretty high diastatic power. Now that's in reference to the enzymes that exist within the grain. There's an enzyme called amylase. It's actually in your saliva. And it breaks down complex carbohydrates like starches into simple carbohydrates, sugars. The grain already has that in it. And so the diastatic power is sort of a reference to say, all right, this grain, if you let it do its thing, it will convert this much complex carbohydrates into this much simple carbohydrates. Barley has a really, really high diastatic power. Wheat has a little bit higher. Rye's pretty good, but barley is great as a baseline. So you take raw barley, you hydrate it till it starts to grow. It'll sprout out a little tail of a little green tail. It's actually starting to grow. And that's indicative of those enzymes actually breaking down the starches and creating food for the plant to start growing. Okay. But then at that point, you soak it in water and you let it sit. You sort of freeze it in that state. You let it sit at that saturation and that temperature and that humidity for a couple days. And then you dry it out. You totally dry out all the moisture so it freeze dries it in place so that it can't do anything. And that's malted grain. That's what malt is. It's just grain that's sort of been sprouted and allowed to start to grow, but then it's stopped part of the way through. And it tastes, if you eat malt, it tastes almost like grape nuts. It's decently sweet. There's, you hear the term like a malted milkshake. That term, the sugar that you get out of grain is called maltose. So, you have sucrose and fructose, fruit sugar, lactose, milk sugar, and then you have maltose, which is grain sugar. So that's where the term malt comes from, or like a malted milkshake. You're using grain sugar to sweeten ice cream.
German, I don't know about you. I already know like 12 new things.
Me too, man.
All right, go on.
This is some pretty fun shit. I love it. Sorry, I am drinking beer while I'm talking to you guys. Just to
gotta have to.
Yeah. Right. Gotta be in the right headspace. So we get that grain and then we grind it up into a really, really coarse flour called grist. Now, most of the malt that you use is it will have just gone through the malting process. But like I said, to add color and to add flavor and to add head retention, make sure the beer keeps that nice cap of foam on it. You'll add in different malts that have been roasted a little bit further to introduce color, to introduce, caramel or chocolate or coffee or, any of those notes to the beer. So malt does have a flavor component, but by roasting them, you caramelize the sugars, you caramelize the maltose, and at that point, the yeast can't break it down. So those sugars stick around in the beer. They get perceived as sweetness. So we have, that one of the components of our old fashioned, we got our sugar right there. So once we have ground up our base malts and then all of our specialty malts, we put it in a big stainless steel vessel called a mash tun, T-U-N. And that mash tun has like sprinkler heads on the top side of the tank. And then it has a false bottom like a colander on the bottom. So you can flush water through the top and it drains out of the bottom.
I've seen that in action before. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a process called mashing. And this is the other reason why we use barley. In addition to having a really good diastatic power, barley is really fibrous. So liquid can flow down through it. Think about the difference between a bowl of granola versus an old bowl of like rice checks. Right. You can't get the liquid out of a bowl of rice checks. It's a gloopy mess. But if you were to tip over your bowl of granola, all the liquid would pretty much slough off. That's why we use barley. It's really fibrous. It allows for that to happen. So we can get the sugar, we can dissolve the sugar into solution, but then we can also get it back out. So we start adding water to this grist and make sort of a soupy oatmeal called the mash. And the temperature of that matters. The temperature of that mash is actually pretty important. Generally you mash at about 150 degrees. And the lower 150 degrees is about a threshold. The closer to that you are, the more efficient you're going to be. It'll take a little bit more time, but the more efficient you're going to be about converting all of the starches into fermentable sugars. But if the temperature gets up, you'll do a little bit of that caramelization process in the mashing. And so you'll leave a little bit of sugar left over. You'll leave some unfermentable sugar in there. So if you're doing like an amber ale, which is supposed to have a little sweetness to it, you're going to mash at like 160 degrees as opposed to, if you're doing a pale or a pilsner or a lager or something that's supposed to be really nice and crisp, you'll mash at about 150 degrees.
So question is, does that mean that, so am I getting this right, that if you have more material that is, that can't be fermented, it'll be sweeter, but that means it'll also be less alcoholic? Is that true? Yes,
a little bit of sugar goes a long way. So like you will lose maybe a 1/10% in terms of alcohol, but it won't be, it's not substantial.
Gotcha. It's just a taste thing.
Yeah. It's more a tasting. And you prepare for that. Like if you can have a sweet beer that's 10%, you just have to account for that in how much grain you put in. Even like there are some styles like a Russian Imperial Stout. You'll add blackstrap molasses just straight into the kettle after. Yeah, you'll just add molasses into the kettle after you've done your mashing, to get that big sort of licorice and chocolate and coffee flavor into the beer, and to make sure that you can hit like 10%. So we can determine how much sugar we've dissolved into solution by measuring the density of the liquid.
Mm-hmm.
And we do that with a little glass bobber called a hydrometer. It's got a metal tip and then a glass bulb and a tail that sticks up past it with markings on it, sort of like a thermometer. And when you put it in the liquid, the denser the liquid is, the more pressure it applies to the glass bulb. And so the higher it floats. So by seeing how dense the liquid is, we can see how much sugar we've dissolved into solution. And thus we can see how much alcohol we're going to be able to create. That's called the starting gravity of the beer, the specific gravity of the beer. If you've ever heard of a beer described as a high gravity beer, that means you start with a lot of sugar. So that means you're going to get a lot of alcohol at the end of it, typically. So once you've finished your mashing, you push that liquid over into the kettle. There are a couple steps in between, but not super important. You push that liquid over into your kettle and you start heating it up. Now the heating process, it does a couple things. One, it stops that conversion process from starches into sugars. That's called saccharification. It stops the saccharification process. It sterilizes it. So any bacteria or dirt or shit that got on your grain, it kills all of that. But it also provides us the opportunity to get the other two more ingredients of our old fashioned. It lets us get our bitterness and it lets us get our aroma. So as the beer, at this point, that really sugar rich liquid, before it's alcoholic, it's called wort. It's written wort, W-O-R-T, but it's pronounced wort. Thanks,
Okay.
Thanks, Germans.
You're welcome.
So you start heating the wort up, and you'll notice on the top of it, it gets this really, really dense, like cappuccino thick foam on the top of it as it starts boiling. And that's all the protein that's out of the grain. Now you want those proteins to bind up, because proteins do a really, really good job of binding to essential oils, to fats. And essential oils are what make things smell good. Flours and beer and food and all of that stuff. And so if the oils bind to that, they become less effective. They don't smell as good. So we want to find a way to bind up those proteins. So by adding heat, the proteins start chaining up and chaining up and chaining up and chaining up. And practically that looks like foam in the beer, in the wort. And eventually we're pumping enough heat, enough energy into it that those chains become so long they become unstable and they break apart and sort of roll up. They coagulate. They roll up on themselves. And at that point, you can start adding the hops. That's called the hot break, when your foam just dissipates out of the boil. Now, hops have two major components. There's when you look at a hop, it looks like a small, soft pine cone. It grows on vines. It's the flower that grows on a vine that's actually in the indica family. It is a relative of marijuana. But these little hop buds, if you peel back the leaves, the little scales on the soft pine cones, you'll see this white powdery sort of waxy resin on the inside. That's called lupulin. Now, lupulin is what we want out of the hops. It has two major components. The first component is acid. It has alpha and beta acid. It has bittering agents to it. And then the second is it has aromatics. It has hydrocarbons and essential oils in there. But the problem is those acids that you want to get out to introduce the bitterness. Remember the bitters in the old fashioned. They're in an oil. They're bound to a fat. They're fat soluble at that point. And so you have to, sort of like rebuilding a Lego set, you got to pull all the pieces apart and then rearrange it so that it stays in solution in water. Oil and water don't mix. Right. So we have to find a way to make that acid water soluble. And the best way to rearrange that molecule is heat. that's the other reason you boil beer, you brew beer. And that process takes about 30 minutes. So when you throw hops in on the front end of the boil, those become your bittering additions. The essential oils boil off pretty quickly. It takes about 15, 20 minutes for all the aromatics in a hop to get boiled off because, it's agitating it so much. There's so much heat in there. So you're not really getting any aroma out of your front end, your first edition hops, but you typically boil for about an hour. So once you get, 15, 20 minutes from the end, you start adding more hops again. And that gives you, your lemon part of your old fashioned. That gives you your aroma. And hops have all sorts of fun stuff. They have, they primarily have three main essential oils, myrcene, humulene, and caryophyllene. I told you shit was going to get real.
Yeah, what the hell?
I know, right? This is one of the things that I love most about beer, though, because like myrcene is found in citrus peel. It's found in roses. It's found in like all sorts of really aromatic flowers. Humulene is found in green tea and black tea. It's found in coniferous trees. And like caryophyllene is actually what they use to train drug dogs to smell marijuana. It is fake marijuana smell. But it's also found in sage and oregano and really herbal flavors. So it's really fun with beer. You're literally introducing compounds. I said you have hops that smell really tangerine-y. When you say that, when you smell a beer and you're like, oh, this smells grapefruity, your nose is literally encountering the exact same compounds, but just within a different context.
So there actually isn't any grapefruit in there. It's just the coming from the hops.
Yeah, it's the thing that makes grapefruit smell like grapefruit, but it's found in hops. It's the same stuff, just in a different vehicle.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really, that's why I love the science end of that, because you the deeper you go, the more you realize like, oh, that's what I'm actually experiencing. I am kind of smelling grapefruit. There's just no grapefruit around.
So if you have a really hoppy beer, as they say, that means they put a lot of hops in towards the end of the boiling process.
Well, that is actually one. The term hoppy for beer, it can be misleading because hops, because they have there's the duality, the dual function of what it does. When someone asks for a really hoppy beer, I'm a little curious of like, well, what do you actually mean? Do you want a bitter beer or do you want a really aromatic beer? Because there's a rating in beer called IBUs, International Bittering Units. And that is talking about how acidic, how much bite it's going to have on your palate. But we have, I have beers that we make, like we make a session pale ale that we dry hop. We do late edition hop at low temperature, so you're not extracting any bitterness. That uses almost twice as many hops as our India Pale Ale, which is really bitter. And I would argue that it's more hoppy than the IPA, but it's just less bitter. Like the aroma, I can literally smell the beer as I'm pouring it in front of me. Right. But it doesn't taste bitter. And so the term hoppy, I don't know, it's a little misleading. But it is, once again, like I said, flavor is that duality. It's the experience on the palate and the aroma. So there's two parts to it. There are people who come in and they say, oh, I don't like hoppy beers. And I give them our really citrusy IPA. We have this IPA called Wonderland Trail, which tastes like you're eating like a tropical fruit basket. And they're like, oh my God, this is so good. And it's like, that's one of the hoppiest beers I have on draft. But it's balanced. That's the issue, is that there's enough alcohol, there's enough sugar, there's enough aroma to make all of that intensity make sense.
So the typical thing when they're saying hoppy beer, they're really thinking bitter is what they're thinking.
Usually that's a reference to IBUs. Generally,
Gotcha.
that's what most people are thinking when they say that. And a lot of people are thinking more toward like the old world IPAs, which tend to be a little bit more resiny and piney, that are going to have a lot more humulene character as opposed to like myrcene or caryophyllene, as opposed to, tropical fruit or herbalness.
That damn humulene.
Yeah, right?
How do you pull out each one of those individual things from the hop then? Wouldn't they all go in at the same time?
They all go in at the same time. But here's the wonderful thing about hop suppliers. When you buy hops from the hop growers, they give you the concentration of those essential oils. They send it to a lab and have it analyzed. And so per pound of hop, you have this many grams of humulene. You have this percentage of myrcene. So you can look at a hop if you go to, say, like the Hop Union, their website, and look at the hop Mosaic. It has really, really high myrcene values, and it has pretty low humulene values. And so you know that it's going to be a wonderful aroma hop. It probably won't give you a crazy amount of bitterness, but it is really, really great to add at the end of the boil.
Interesting.
Dude, holy shit. I feel like you know more than I've ever learned about anything.
Anything ever.
Anything.
You spend 6 years with a small company just thinking every day, oh God, I hope this works. I hope this works. You learn every fucking thing there is to know about that process and that company. So, and also
I've got a couple questions for you.
Yeah, what's up?
All right. So you probably go through kicks, but right now, what's your favorite beer?
Oh man. I am actually the beer I'm drinking right now.
Ooh.
We partner with a local coffee roastery called Fulcrum.
Okay.
And their head roaster, this crazy Costa Rican dude named Blas, who, oh my God, I love him so much. I wish I could show you his text messages to me because I swear he uses voice to text. But when he talks, he kind of talks like this. And so the way that the words come out onto the text messages make me happier than just about anything in the world. It's literally, he said the word world and it texted me WHIRL. It in
the whole world.
In the whole world. So we partner with them and we're doing an American brown ale, but then we're literally making it's the beer's called cold brew brown. And there's a coffee preparation method called cold brewing where you do really coarse ground coffee and you put it in cold water and you let it sit overnight. And you get this generally pretty mellow, a little sweeter, but really intense coffee. But instead of using water, we make an American brown ale, and then we just throw tons of coffee into the fermenter and then make cold brew using the beer instead of water.
Wow.
So it's nice. It's a dark beer, but it's remarkably light in the body. Think just because it's dark doesn't necessarily mean it's heavy. Think like iced coffee. It drinks almost, it's like iced coffee and a piece of biscotti. It's pretty great.
So would it have all the caffeine that the coffee would have, or was it be brewed out or something?
So in Washington State, it's actually illegal. It is illegal
and alcohol together, right?
Courtesy of Four Loko.
Yeah, Four Loko.
Yeah. That shitty malt beverage. Yeah, it is now illegal. So we use a decaf coffee. That's one of the reasons we work directly with a roastery, because I was like, yes, we need good coffee, but we also need it to be decaf for legal reasons.
Yeah,
man, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So if you were to envision in your head a scale.
Yep.
With the left-hand side being very, very light beers.
Yep.
And on the right-hand side being just the darkest beers.
Burley. Yep.
If you could maybe give us 5 of what you would recommend moving from one end of the scale to the other.
In terms of beers that you can pick up in the store?
Or yeah. Let's go with beers our viewers could get. Our listeners could get.
Totally. Okay. So on the really light end, that's actually one thing that I've been... The other beer that I was going to mention, we made a Mexican lager. We got sick of buying Pacifico at the store. And so just made our own and literally threw crystallized lime into it. We made Pacifico with lime.
Nice.
But we, to that end, there is on the light side of beers, there is sort of a recent trend in breweries of doing these really mildly tart beers called kettle sours. Mm-hmm. You might hear some of the styles under kettle sours. You might hear them as Berliner Weiss or Goza. Goza is a really fun style. You actually make it with sea salt and coriander. It was meant to be, it's like a 3% beer that was meant to essentially be Gatorade in the summertime. It's a little salty in the same way that Gatorade has like a lot of electrolytes. It has a lot of potassium and sodium in it. It is a salted beer, but it's super light. It's really crisp. It's super easy to drink. Actually, in San Francisco, Almanac Brewing Company does one called the Golden Gate Goza. That's awesome. It's out of this world.
Oh, maybe we'll have to see if we can find it.
It's really tart, but it's super, super refreshing. And that's also a fun entry into the world of sour beers. That's sort of its own monster.
Let's not get into that monster.
Yeah.
Right, so moving forward to just slightly less light.
Yeah, slightly less light. I have been really loving. I don't know if they're in California yet. There's a brewery out in Yakima called Bale Breaker Brewing Company that I've really been loving. They have a pale ale called Field 41. That's just, it's super sweet. It tastes like you're drinking orange juice. It's really, really lovely. A great alternative to that is out of another California brewing company, Firestone Walker. They're Easy Jack, which is a session IPA, session pale ale. It's going to be one of those beers that I was talking about that's super aromatic, but not super bitter. Like it is very hoppy in that they use a lot of hops in it, but it's not a crazy bitter beer. It's just dry as a bone. Yeah. It's like a really minerally white wine.
That's what I want every night.
Yeah.
Very minerally white wine.
Yeah. It's really, really tasty. And when you leave, like if you're making green tea and you leave the tea bag in just a little bit too long and it's got like you take a sip and it feels like all the moisture in your mouth just goes off the palate. It's like Easy Jack is that kind of beer. Like it keeps you wanting to drink it. So that's a really fun one. Scaling up from there to like an amber or a brown. Beep, 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 beep. Oh man, you're putting me on the spot now.
I know. And then we move on to the dark shit.
Yeah, then things get real.
So tell me about an amber you like.
As much as I think they are shitty human beings, one of my favorite beers to just knock back a 6-pack of is Rogue Brewing Company's Dead Guy Ale. And it's not technically an amber. It's a German style called a Maibach. It's a slightly sweeter lager that's generally made in May, hence Mai. Mai is the German word for May. It's just really great. It's got a little bit of orange citrus character to it, but it's got this really nice carameliness to it. It's nice and easy. It's light. It's accessible. Yeah, it's a fun one.
All right, so now tell us about like the darkest of the dark.
All right. So moving into the depths of despair, the pit of despair. There is, oh man, let me think on this. There's a brewery in St. Louis called Four Hands, and they have a horchata milk stout. They have this milk stout that they add lactose sugar into it to make it nice and smooth. Same way you add milk to coffee to sort of even it out. But then they also add in like cinnamon and nutmeg to it, and it's like drinking a cookie. It's so yummy. Yeah, it's really, really tasty. There's what else? On the dark and hoppy end, going back to Firestone Walker, they do a black IPA called Wookie Jack.
I've heard of that one.
I think that was a little bit more sloth from the Goonies than it was.
You sound so sad.
Chocolate.
Exactly. Wookie Jack is a really fun one for a combination of like that really piney bitterness, but also like for people who like straight black coffee, that's a great beer. Like
Right.
it's got that bitterness, but it's also got those dark roasty flavors to it. For dark beer, one of my favorites ever is out of from Deschutes Brewing Company. Being an Oregon boy, I grew up in Oregon. Their Abyss, which is an imperial stout, is just you know when you go out to dinner and you order like there's that menu item that's like murder chocolate tort, and it comes out and there's a sliver of it that's maybe like a quarter of an inch wide, and you're like, come on, dude, give me a little bit more than that. And then you take a bite and you're like, I can't eat anymore. It's just it has the density of like a dying star. The Abyss is that in beer form.
Wow.
It's so complex. I mean, it's almost like drinking whiskey at that point. Like you touch it with your tongue and the flavor just develops and develops and develops across your palate. It's really fun.
I had a couple of random questions real quick. First of all, can you go to a party and they only have like Bud Light and can you still drink it?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
There are a lot of craft brewers. Like, all right, in principle, big market beers like Bud and Miller and Coors, it's rough because they actively want my business to die. Like there's been the company that owns Budweiser, AB InBev, and the company that owns Miller Coors, or Molson Coors, they have been buying up craft breweries. Like we keep taking away part of the market. And so they're like, well, we can't beat you, so we're just going to walk in with a briefcase full of money and buy you out. And that
I
actually
do like briefcases filled with money.
I know, like there's one part of it of like, yeah, you worked your ass off, go ahead and take your briefcase full of money. But like Elysian Brewing Company, which is a fixture of the Seattle craft beer community, just got purchased. And it hit home for a lot of the breweries in the city of like, we built this community, we built this culture, and then you just came in with enough money to be like, yeah, I'll take that. It's like building a house and having someone walk in and be like, yeah, I'll buy that from you. It's like, yeah, but I built this. So there's that part that bugs me. That being said, I am not a beer snob. I am very, very firm in the belief that like the best beer is the one you enjoy most right now. If you are loving Bud Light Lime, fucking drink a Bud Light Lime. That's great. Like, I will not judge you for that because it's a continuum of like, there are days when I want to go out and find the best Mexican restaurant and get myself like some just pornographic carnitas. And then there are days when I'm going to Taco Bell. And like, that's part of my continuum of experience. I'm not going to discount any one part of that. There are days when I don't want to think about my beer. Like I have Pabst Blue Ribbon in my fridge right now, alongside a bottle of sour that I've been aging for 3 years that cost me like $35. But like, it's beer. It can be so many different things. Like it doesn't just have to be like this out of body, amazing, orgiastic experience. It can just be a drink, man. Like
it's a very refreshing point of view.
Yeah, it's fine. Like you read books that inform you and educate you, and you also read books that are just fun to read. Like allow yourself to have that continuum of experience.
I have two more quick questions before we go.
Yeah.
Unless Stephen has more too, but
I've got a game. So
okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
One question would be: we have a lot of listeners in the UK.
Yeah.
So, do you have any experience with beers that come out of there, or what kind of craft is it? Has the craft beer craze, as it were, gone over to the UK as well, or is it just kind of an American thing?
Yeah, absolutely. One of like the big there's a brewery out there called Brewdog, and they are known for being like they're the Sex Pistols of breweries. They are fucking punk rock. They are in actually in the light of a lot of these breweries getting bought out. Like a UK brewery called Camden just got bought out, and Brewdog released this video of like the post on it was nailing our flag to the fucking mast. Like they pretty much came out and they just said, we will never sell. That is not why we are in this game. So there is definitely like the UK has been in the craft beer industry, and they are doing it. It is different. The nature of the beast out there is different. We actually, our old brew house, we sold to some guys who came over from South London and are doing a British style. They're doing all open ferment. They're not force carbonating any of their beer, so it's all naturally carbonated. So it's going to taste a little flat. They're serving it on a cask engine, not on like a CO2 draft system. So it might taste a little flat to you. But they're doing like 2%, 3% bitters, mild, and they're crushing it. They're doing awesome beer. It is definitely a different beast than brewing is in the Northwest. And I think that's simply because of the access we have to ingredients. We're 120 miles from one of the largest hop producers in the world.
Oh, geez.
The Yakima Valley produces some of the best, most desirable hops on the planet. And two of our old brewers are 4th and 5th generation hop farmers, respectively. So we just get the pick of the litter. Like, we get to do those big hoppy IPAs because that's what's available to us.
Very nice.
So I do think that there is a difference in what's going on, but I absolutely think that across the board, the UK it's growing, and going back to the whole cider thing, we're indebted to them because a lot of cider culture has come over from the UK. Like, Magners is all people know besides Angry Orchard and like Strongbow as a good dry cider, like a pub style cider. So yeah.
Very cool. And my last question I have to ask, because I've heard older people say this, that this whole craze about craft beers and all these different kinds of beers, a limitless amount of kinds of beers now, is a fad. That's what they're saying. So totally. Is that true, or do you think it's going to pass and we'll be back to like the standard 10 beers that they serve everywhere, or will this continue on for good?
To illustrate, I would point out, like, how many people do you know that are still drinking Folgers? Or how many people do you know that don't know what a cappuccino or an espresso is? I would point to what happened in coffee with Starbucks and Pete's and that revolution that happened there, where you went from people just saying it's got to be black, bitter, and have caffeine in it, and I'm happy, to people who were asking about what country their beans came from, being very specific about what they wanted in their cup of coffee. And now that's commonplace. So I do think the craft beer, I would like to believe that craft beer is here to stay.
Me too.
It is. I love the fact that in the same way that you go to your local, your local corner store or your local grocery or your local coffee shop, I love the idea of every town having like 3 or 4 little breweries, and they don't have to be huge. They don't have to conquer the world, but like, go down and buy beer from people who made it. Support people who are doing something that they love and making a good product. And it's also, it's also fun. Like, it's enjoyable to have product that's more complex and more interesting. Like, great, Miller and Coors, you've locked down the light lager. There are so many different other styles of beer out there that you can get into to expand upon the beer world. So, yeah, I think it's sticking.
So I've got a game. I ask all of our guests to play a game with us.
Yes,
and I'm going to play a game called What Do You Have? And I'm going to name some foods. Some of them commonplace, some of them good, some of them weird, some of them terrible. Yep. And I want you to tell me the beer that I should pair with it.
Oh, dude, this is awesome. Beer pairs better than any other beverage, in my opinion. So.
All right, let's show it off. Let's see.
I will crush it.
Be quick about
but you get one answer. Yeah, you can't think about it all day. You get one answer.
Yep.
All right. Burger and fries.
Burger and fries. I'm going to go with Fat Tire Amber Ale from New Belgium Brewing Company.
Ooh, very nice.
That's fast.
Fruit cake.
Fruitcake, I'm going to go with Rodenbach Grand Cru. It is a Flanders style red. It's slightly tart. It tastes like cranberry jam. It's a little sweet. It's a little tart. It's really robust.
Okay. Pizza.
I'm going to go, Pacifico. It's got to be. It's light beer and pizza. I love it.
All right. On a similar vein, 4-day-old pizza.
4-day-old pizza. Grief. Self-loathing.
Drink it with every meal.
Yeah. No, I would say, okay, 4-day-old pizza.
Like right at that point where you're not sure if you should still eat it, but you're going to go ahead because you don't have anything else in the fridge. Like that kind of point.
The best beer for that is a shot of whiskey just to kill anything that might be living on top of that pizza.
I like it. All right, chicken parmesan.
Chicken parmesan. You got a lot of fat. You got a lot of salt. I'm gonna go with a Belgian wit. It's got orange peel. It's a wheat beer with orange peel and coriander in it. There's a little bit of sweetness, so that'll cut into the saltiness of the chicken parmesan. But it's also light enough. You're eating something really heavy, so you want something kind of refreshing.
All right, final one. Fried Spam sandwich.
Fried Spam sandwich. Oh man, see, I love Spam sushi. That's not the grossest thing in the world for me. But once again,
I love fried Spam sandwiches.
That's a shit ton of salt.
Yeah, it is.
I am going
low sodium.
Low sodium? Okay. I am going to go with Pivo Pils, another Firestone Walker beer. It's a really, really dry Czech Pilsner. It's nice and grainy. It'll be really refreshing. Very quaffable. There's an industry term for you.
Ooh, very nice. All right, well, thank you so much, Dan. You've been a very informative expert.
Of course. I'm sorry. I feel like I kind of got on the rails for a while. This is how the science of if I can say one last thing before I peace out. The reason I go into all the hard science of it and kind of geek out over this is, I think, probably my favorite thing about beer ever, is that there's a ton of hard science behind it. There's chemistry, there's biology. We didn't even get into like yeast varietals and cultivation and bacteria beers and stuff.
No,
like
thank
that.
you. No.
There's a lot of hard science behind it, but there's also a lot of soft science of like, what do I want it to look like? What do I want it to taste like? What's the philosophy behind why I'm making beer? What's my branding going to look like? It's a lot of, Jarman, to go back to your earlier comment about like, we've been making this forever. How is it that like people a long time ago were able to make this and we're still doing the same thing? I love that we've taken all of the knowledge that we've learned since then all the way up to now to have a good time. Like, honestly, just to enjoy ourselves, like just to take a moment and look at the world and gain some perspective. Like, I love that we expend so much effort and knowledge for something just to be enjoyable.
That's true.
Well, thank you, Dan. So go check out and visit Dan at Two Beers Brewing Company in Seattle.
Woo-woo!
He's there a lot, I'm presuming.
Yes.
So go see him. Have him recommend a beer for you. I'm sure you're in brilliant hands. Dan, thank you again.
Absolutely. Love you guys.
Well, in the evening, yes, in the morning, well, in the afternoon, yes, in the spring.
Well, that was a fantastic interview, wasn't it,
Just
Steve?
great. So much fun. So much fun.
It was a lot of fun.
I learned like 23 new things.
I just like that I understood what he was talking about for the most part, because like some of the terminology, but he explained things very well. It was very cool.
Yeah, science is hard.
It is hard.
Here at Play on Nerds, we have developed an interesting rating system to bring to you our ideas on the trailers we're about to review. At the low end of the scale, we have Burn It, where we think you should find every copy you can get your hands on and throw it into a barrel fire.
Kill it with fire. And our next step is Drunk Watch, which means that, yeah, I'd watch this movie. It'd be entertaining if I was under the influence of some kind of substance of some kind. But if I was sober, probably not going to check this thing out.
Nope, not going to see it. Next, we've got We'll See, which is maybe we just don't know enough about this movie to tell what the hell it's going to be.
Could be good, could be bad, not sure. And our next category would be Get the Couch Ready, which means I'm definitely going to check this movie out at home. Wouldn't necessarily pay the big bucks of seeing it in theaters, but I'm definitely going to watch it at home. So get that couch ready.
After that, we have Take a Look, where we are recommending for you, our viewers and listeners, to check out this movie and check out the trailer and tell us what you think about it. We wanted to see what you guys think.
It looks pretty good, but we're not quite sure yet.
Yeah, take a look.
Yeah.
Let us know.
And for our final and best category, we have Shut Up and Take My Money.
Shut up and take my money.
This looks so awesome, we're gonna see it.
That's where we cannot wait to give Hollywood bigwigs all of the money that we have earned at work to go see a film for $47. We're so excited, we just have to go see it. We don't have a choice.
And that is our A Play on Nerds official copyrighted trademark system for rating our movie trailers.
So what trailer would you like to start with this week, John?
Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them.
Ooh.
Lumos Maxima. Lumos Maxima.
Yesterday, a wizard entered New York with a case. A case full of magical creatures. And unfortunately, some have escaped. It was open.
Just a smidge.
Mr. Scamander!
This is basically a prequel of Harry Potter in a way. It's the story of I'm just forgetting his name suddenly. What the hell's his name?
Salazar Slytherin?
No, Newt Scamander. That's his name.
There you go.
The writer of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is a book that just happened to be in the books they talked about as a textbook they used in Hogwarts. Yeah. And this tells his story in 1920s America. So we see some American wizards and how that all works.
Yeah. And I think it'll be good no matter what, I think. Get a good actor, Harry Potter people back on, you get all the hype. I don't think it'll be terrible.
It was kind of like a teaser trailer. Didn't really tell that much.
Yeah. So then maybe I'll have to give this one a we'll see.
Yeah, I feel like
we don't quite know yet. All right, 2 we'll sees, I think.
Yeah, because it was pretty. It was very pretty. Good actors, and it's Harry Potter, so it's probably good. But it's just like didn't see much. So we'll see.
True. I want to see some monsters before I decide.
Yeah, neither of us are the
not
Harry
all
Potter.
of them. I don't want to see all the monsters. I just want to see some of the monsters.
Like neither of us are Harry Potter fanatics, though. So we're not like, whoa, oh God, it's going to be fantastic. We don't know. So
now for this one, I was so happy that we chose it. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2. Again, another Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2. It's got some stupid bottom line. I'm not even going to remember it. Right
Something
now.
Like, I don't know, Resurgence or whatever the hell they always put there.
On the half show. It doesn't matter. It's terrible.
What's happening out there, Donnie?
I don't know. It doesn't look good.
Gear up, guys.
Whoa! This speech is my recital.
Bogey's on the bus.
I think it's very vital.
Hit the button.
What button? There are a million buttons.
All right.
On top. Here we go.
Whoa!
Here we go.
What are you, superheroes?
Just 4 brothers who hate bullies and love this city.
Whoa. This never works out well for you. What's your name?
Casey Jones.
Hey.
One question. Are you two guys like a thing?
I'm looking for Aaron Moores.
But we could work with that.
Me too.
This is gonna be good!
Dude, bringing back the mohawk. Good for you.
Oh, y'all got jokes, huh? Why are we going with the turtles? When something bad happens, you want to be with the turtles.
This actually looks a lot better than the last one, I think.
I don't know. It looks like a Michael Bay Transformer film at the beginning of the trailer because spaceships coming down, and then we get reintroduced to the turtles, and then bam, you get to see 2 really dumb-looking guys before they become 2 dumb-looking creature guys.
Did you not know about Rocksteady and Bebop when you were a kid?
I did, but did you see the shot of the actors?
Oh yeah,
they got just stupid, dumb-looking guys that then just become big It's just
because one of them is a wrestler. He's Shamrock, the wrestler.
It's no good. Either way, it's no good.
See, I felt more like this is a return to what the feel of what Ninja Turtles were for so long in the 90s, of just kind of goofy and fun and more for kids and less of the weirdness that was the last movie. Like, what the hell was that last movie?
Basically what they've said is that the complaint they got and the complaint they heard was that there was too much of what's her face?
April O'Neil.
She's like 70% of the movie is just her.
Megan Fox, yeah.
It's like a half hour until you see turtles. That's bullshit.
Yeah, and she's not a very good actress, so...
No, she can't carry a movie.
Keep the focus away from her.
Apparently, in this next one, it's going to be like 70% turtles, 30% her.
Which would be great. And Casey Jones, the guy from Arrow.
Casey Jones. I like him.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Steve Amell.
So there are some high points, but I think right now this just looks ridiculous and terrible. Right now. It could shift. They say they've confirmed that Krang is going to show up. But I don't know if that's going to take it out for me. I don't know.
So then what do you give this one?
I'm going to have to give a double. We'll see.
All right,
we'll see, I guess. Huh?
I'm giving it a take a look because I'm more positive, like more optimistic about it, but I need to see a little bit
more. You are
more
optimistic. That's very true.
So there you go. So some movies to be excited about or at least look into later on.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for joining us. A special thank you to Dan Armerding once more from Two Beers Brewing Company in Seattle, Washington. Check out their website. Check out Dan. Go visit him. Go get a beer recommend. Thanks again, Dan.
Absolutely. It was a fantastic interview. I learned a ton. So thanks for setting that up, Steve. And
yeah, it was great.
Thanks for joining us again after being so long away for the holidays. And we'll be back again in a couple weeks.
Bring you more nerdy fun in the new year of 2016.
Absolutely.
Thanks again, Internet.
Stay nerdy, my friends.